You ever have one of those nights where the world decides to show you exactly how rotten it can get? Like the universe hands you a front row ticket to your own public execution, and all you can do is watch. Yeah, that happened to me. And let me tell you, nobody in that gilded ballroom saw the ending coming. Not even close. Picture this: Phoenix Charity Gala, Olympian Hotel, ceiling dripping crystal chandeliers, air thick with old money and champagne. You could smell the power, the generational arrogance, the nervous ambition, all of it mingling like expensive perfume. There I was, Dr. Alani Adebayo, minding my own business in an emerald silk dress I'd chosen to stand out. Little did I know how much it would matter in about 2 minutes. I didn't even see the cake coming. 1 second, the string quartet's playing Vivaldi. People are laughing too loud at jokes they barely understand. And the next, smack, a slab of chocolate nemesis cake detonates against the side of my face. The air goes still, like the moment after a car crash, when time hasn't decided whether to keep moving forward. The hostess, Victoria Vanderbilt. Imagine a statue sculpted out of inherited malice, platinum hair, and silver silk. She's standing there with her perfect nails and a smile that could slice diamonds. Yeah, she threw it. Not by accident. Not in anger. Just because she could. You know that moment where everyone in the room's watching, waiting to see how you'll crack? I could feel their eyes crawling over me. The laughter started slow, nervous, then it swelled, echoing around the marble like wolves howling for blood. Phones went up, faces hungry for drama. Victoria basked in it, turning to her plastic friends. "Money can't buy class," she said, voice sharp as a slap. They shrieked. She was loving it, but I didn't give them what they wanted. Didn't wipe at the mess, didn't run, didn't cry. I stood there, back straight, chin up, even as chocolate dripped down my jaw and ruined that perfect dress. My hair, carefully braided, pinned up just so, framed a face that refused to break. I lifted my hand, scraped a glob of frosting off my cheek, looked at it for a beat, and let it plop to the floor. Splat. Quietest sound you could imagine, but it echoed like a gunshot in that cathedral of money. And suddenly the laughter cracked, just a bit. That's the thing with mobs. They're only brave if you flinch. Victoria, smelling weakness, leaned in with a hiss. Some doors, darling, are meant to remain closed. And her crew, her allies, some of the most powerful people in the state, laughed a little less confidently this time, more out of habit than pleasure. There I was, a black woman with success enough to scare them, and all they wanted was to put me back in my place. But instead of shrinking, I felt myself grow, every eye in the room glued to me, not her. Funny thing about cruelty, it spreads like a virus, fast and ugly. No one handed me a napkin. No one stood with me. It was safer to laugh with the predator than risk becoming the prey. You could see it in their faces, in the way they looked everywhere but at me. Victoria raised her glass for another toast. To those of us who know our place. The room raised theirs, hollow, desperate, their laughter suddenly sounding like panic in disguise. But the real tension? It was underneath, swirling around me like a hurricane just waiting to land. The truth is, this wasn't a party. It was a performance of power, and Victoria was the queen. Her family's name was carved into half the buildings in this city. Tonight was supposed to be her coronation, her final say in who belonged. Joke was on her, because as the conversation stumbled back to life, people tried to fill the silence with anything but what had just happened. Victoria kept circling me, tossing pastries at my feet, trying to humiliate me into submission. More chocolate, cream, macaron dust, my dress transformed from elegance to battleground. Each insult landed harder, each accidental barb meant to remind me I was an outsider, a fraud. The guests watched, waiting for me to fall apart, their faces a sick blend of fear and anticipation. And then, a twist. Whispers started in the back. Who is she, really? A few folks finally recognized my face, not from the party circuit, but from business magazines, Forbes covers, interviews from global summits. You could see the realization hit them. I wasn't just a guest. I wasn't a social climber begging for approval. I was the woman who signed some of their paychecks, who had quietly bought up companies they depended on, whose signature propped up their fortunes. Victoria tried to wrestle back control. She raised her voice, tried to turn the crowd, but her words fell flat. Suddenly, the laughter felt hollow, forced. People began to check their phones, fingers flying, faces blanching as they read who I was, what I owned. The truth spread through the ballroom like wildfire. I was not someone you could afford to humiliate. You ever see a crowd turn on a dime? It's not dramatic, not all at once. It's the nervous glances, the sudden respect, the way people back away from the queen they were worshiping minutes before. The ones who had cheered Victoria on now looked for exits, desperate to distance themselves from her sinking ship that I didn't need to yell, didn't need to threaten. I let the silence work for me. I spoke only when the time was right, my words dropping like hammers. Are you sure this is the stage you want to stand on with me? That's all it took. The power in the room shifted. The crowd realized the only real crown belonged to the one who could destroy their world with a single decision. So I did. I announced, in front of them all, that my billions, the very lifeblood of the Vanderbilt Foundation, were being withdrawn. Right there, right then. It was surgical, immediate. Their empire began to collapse before their eyes. Phones buzzed, frantic calls to bankers, to lawyers, to anyone who could stop the avalanche. They couldn't. Victoria's champagne flute shattered on the marble. The party dissolved into chaos, and nobody, not one, came to comfort her. News cameras flashed, headlines exploded, and in every picture, I was there, calm, resolute, still wearing the chocolate as a badge of honor. Victoria stood alone, power stripped, a hollow shell in a silver dress, watching everything she'd inherited turn to dust. Her friends abandoned her. The crowd parted for me like I was royalty. I walked out, head high, leaving behind a lesson carved in marble and memory. Humiliation doesn't weaken you. It reveals who truly holds the power. And as I left that room, oh, the silence. I could feel every pair of eyes, every headline, every trembling hand turning not to the fallen queen, but to the storm she'd tried to break. Let me tell you, justice doesn't always wear a judge's robe. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it walks out of a ballroom in a ruined emerald dress, never looking back to oh, here's the thing. Whose side are you on? Did Victoria get what she deserved? Or was that justice too sharp for your taste? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about power, dignity, and the moment when the world finally turns. You know, walking out of that ballroom, I thought I'd feel triumphant, like a warrior striding away from a battlefield she just conquered. But it's never that simple, is it? The night air outside was cool, almost sharp against my skin, the distant thrum of traffic a reminder that the real world kept spinning, oblivious to the carnage I'd just left behind. Camera flashes chased me down the marble steps, reporters shouting my name, desperate for a quote, a soundbite, anything. But I gave them nothing, just a glance, a measured smile. You could say I was savoring my silence, letting it stretch as long as I could. Funny thing, dignity. People treat it like armor, but it's heavier than anyone realizes. As I stepped onto the curb, a limo glided up, the door swinging open like I was expected, though we both knew no one expected how tonight would end. I climbed in, sinking into the leather, the door closing out the roar behind me. For the first time all night, I exhaled, long and slow, my hand trembling ever so slightly, finally letting the adrenaline, the fury, the hurt, all of it, drain away for a moment. You might wonder if I felt sorry for Victoria Vanderbilt right then. If, in that flash of empathy, I wanted to turn back, to offer a lifeline. Truth? Not really. Her empire was built on gatekeeping, on exclusion, on the calculated humiliation of anyone who didn't fit her mold. She wrote the rules, and tonight, for once, she had to play by them. Still, there was a weird emptiness in the victory. That's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. It doesn't fill the holes they've carved into you. It just proves they can't dig any deeper. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, and my phone started buzzing. Board members, lawyers, journalists, even a few bold guests from the gala texting apologies, explanations, last-ditch efforts to salvage their sinking ships. I ignored them all, just staring at my reflection, cake-stained, exhausted, but not defeated. My grandmother's voice floated back to me, as clear as the first time I heard it in that cramped kitchen. The world will not test you with fire, little lioness. It will test you with ice. Tonight, I'd been all ice. But let's rewind a second, because while I was gone, that ballroom was melting down like a financial Chernobyl. People who'd laughed with Victoria were now circling the drain, their fortunes on the line. Deals they thought were done evaporated in seconds. I'd heard, later, that Victoria tried to rally, to shout orders, but her voice was hoarse, trembling, barely more than a whisper. Her allies were nowhere to be found. Her friends ditched her as fast as they could, not wanting to get caught in the fallout. The same influencers who'd streamed my humiliation were now live tweeting her collapse. Hashtags trending by the minute. Hashtag Vanderbilt fall. Hashtag Emerald Reckoning. Even hashtag Chocolate Justice. You can't buy loyalty, not when fear walks in the door. Somewhere, though, I imagine someone in that crowd. Maybe the junior analyst, maybe a caterer, maybe even one of Victoria's friends, watching what happened and feeling that electric jolt of hope, seeing the script flip, even if just for a night. That's what made it worth it, you know? Not the money, not the revenge, but the knowledge that sometimes, for once, the storm wins. The limo stopped at a red light, and I saw my face on the giant screen above the avenue. News anchors dissecting every second of the meltdown, speculating about the collapse of the Vanderbilt dynasty. For a brief, ridiculous second, I wanted to call my grandmother and tell her I'd survived, but she was long gone. Still, I think she would have been proud of the silence, of the steel, of the refusal to let their cruelty decide my value. Back at my apartment, I scrubbed away the last of the chocolate, changed out of that ruined dress, and finally allowed myself a shaky laugh. Not triumphant, not bitter, just the sound you make when you realize the world has spun on its axis and you're still standing. The calls kept coming. My legal team needed decisions, the press wanted interviews, rivals wanted to cut deals. I didn't rush. Power, real power, isn't about noise. It's about timing, about choosing when to speak, and when to simply let the silence hang out. A couple days later, the fallout was everywhere. Victoria's foundation was gutted, her name dragged through every news cycle, her invitations revoked by the very people who cheered her on. I read an op-ed comparing her to a queen dethroned by her own arrogance. The irony didn't escape me. I heard, too, that a couple of those old money families, quietly, sheepishly, reached out to set up meetings, hoping to get in my good graces. Let's just say, I didn't rush to answer, and yet, for all the headlines, for all the chaos, what stuck with me wasn't the destruction. It was the silence in that room after I spoke. The way the air felt when the crowd realized their power was a mirage, and that sometimes dignity really is the sharpest blade. Maybe that's what real justice looks like. Not loud, not bloody, but undeniable. A shift in the air. A room full of people forced to see themselves in the mirror, even if just for a moment. You know what I mean? Sometimes I wonder what became of Victoria after that night. Did she learn anything, or just double down, blaming the world for a crown she never truly owned? Does it matter? Maybe, maybe not. But the world kept turning, and somewhere out there, someone else in an emerald dress, or a navy suit, or a pair of cheap work boots, walked into a room built to break them, and remembered my silence. Maybe they stood a little taller. Maybe they didn't flinch. So what about you? Ever been in a room where the odds were stacked, the laughter cruel, the exit blocked? What did you do? Did you stand your ground? Or did you let their voices decide your story? Drop your answer in the comments, because these are the moments that shape us. And if this story hit a nerve, or made you rethink who really holds the power, share it. Let's keep the conversation going, about dignity, about justice, about what happens when the storm finally comes for the throne. And, hey, if you ever find yourself at the center of a storm, remember, you don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes, all you need is to stand, be still, and let the world feel the weight of your silence.